Amid the returns of several former WWE superstars and with Triple H now in charge of creative and talent relations, several WWE superstars believe a draft is imminent. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and let's talk about a possible draft. Yes, this comes from a really interesting report by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, and that is the fact that Fightful is reporting that WWE talent believe a draft is imminent. Now, it must be said, the draft is usually a little bit later. I mean, it varies most years. The last 2 or 3 years, it's always been October, but even when that was the case, even when the draft actually happened in October, initially at least twice that I can recall, it was actually planned to happen in August or in September. So the fact that it could happen a little bit earlier this year isn't out of the realm of possibility. The WWE draft could indeed be upon us. With WWE's new regime, a lot of the roster movement has already been made, and talent believe there could be more on the way. There are several WWE Raw superstars that are scheduled for the first SmackDown following Clash at the Castle on September 9. On the other side of things, SmackDown talent are also scheduled for Monday Night Raw episodes internally for the September 5 and September 12 dates. This has led talent to speculate internally that the WWE Draft will shortly be happening following the Clash at the Castle premium live event. Now, WWE superstars and talent have not been told either way. This hasn't been confirmed to them just yet, but there have been other things that have been said to them to lead them to believe that this could be happening. Whether it's, we've got plans for the future, we're going to be changing this about your gimmick, we're going to be shifting to this, we're going to be doing that, you're going to be working this person. Everyone thinks that there's a lot of moving parts right now, and it feels like WWE, Triple H, his writers, his creative team are internally setting things up for a draft to take place to move everyone where they should be and then move off into this new creative direction. Now, Fightful are also reporting that writers have noted that repackages are also more likely following this date as opposed to the immediate future. Again, basically what Triple H and his team are doing right now is setting things up. They are setting things up. They are putting plans in place that they are going to execute once everyone is where they should be. Whether that's being on Raw, whether that's being on SmackDown, whether that's going back to NXT as well. All of the writers that maybe are going to change someone's name, repackage them, move them back to an old gimmick, change the gimmick up, that's all going to happen after these potential draft dates. Now, for some of the talent that are wildly speculated to get repackaged, which hasn't been confirmed, Max Dupree, of course, was scheduled for last night's edition of SmackDown, and T-Bar appeared on this week's edition of Main Event. Several people believe that Max Dupree, in the coming weeks, will be no more. He will revert to being LA Knight, and he could move to Monday Night Raw, or he might stay on SmackDown, or something might happen when it comes to him. T-Bar, terrible name, hangover from the Retribution days, might go back to Dominik Dijakovic. And if that is the case, he might move to SmackDown, he might go to Raw, or they might do vignettes to help build him up once again, considering he's been saddled with this awful gimmick for such a long period of time. Now, thus far, the talent that Fightful have spoken to, haven't been informed specifically or explicitly about a draft, a date, or anything like that, much less what brand they'll end up on if and when it does happen. So, for me, as I mentioned, it makes the most sense that a draft would be in the immediate future. I think at the moment, clearly, Triple H is setting things up. That's what it feels like. And that includes bringing all of these people back. And it is wild because WWE last year, when they were doing these budget cuts, whilst again I didn't agree with them at the time, I did understand the logic behind it in terms of what Nick Khan was driving and what Vince McMahon wanted to do at the time. Nick Khan basically said to Vince McMahon, you realize that you don't actually need all these people. You know, we're going to be starting touring again, but we don't need all of these people. We've got a lot of people under contract, and a lot of people really aren't doing anything. Or they're under big contracts, and how much money are they really drawing? Or we can build up some new stars for less money. And in certain instances, it did make a little bit of sense. Now, you could argue that it's the chicken and the egg principle because some of these people weren't drawing money, or some of these people weren't over because of bad creative coming from Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. And I think a lot of the time that's what talent will push back on. We heard the report the other day about Bray Wyatt and other names, people like Aleister Black that have since left the company. They would say, actually, you know what? yeah, maybe I wasn't over as I should have been, or there was so much potential of stuff I could have done, but you're shackled creatively under Vince McMahon, and he's got a vision of the character which doesn't go into the vision that I initially had when I created the character in NXT, or what got me over in NXT in the first place. So yeah, I wasn't over. Yeah, I was on a big contract, and maybe I wasn't justifying that contract, but that isn't necessarily my fault when the creative was that bad. And it does feel like with these names that are being brought back, I liken it to 2016, when WWE had this big influx of signings, and it felt very much at the time that they were building to something, and all of these names being called up. And what it was building to ultimately was a draft. You had these signings like AJ Styles, like Shinsuke Nakamura, like the Good Brothers, and you had these names being called up from the main roster, whether it was the likes of Bayley, or whether it was the likes of Enzo Amore and Big Cass, you're thinking at the time, or American Alpha. A lot of these names started to show up, and you felt like at the time, the roster's pretty big. And it was through the success. I believe Vince McMahon or WWE had even said this in a press release when they brought the draft back and they brought the brand extension back in 2016. They said through the success of Triple H and NXT and having these just sheer, line of talent that was constantly being churned out and being called up to the main roster, they had one of the biggest rosters they'd had in a long period of time, and they felt comfortable with being able to do a brand extension, with able to have separate rosters or Raw or SmackDown. And what we feel like, or I certainly feel like we're in right now, where random talents appearing on SmackDown, random talents appearing on Raw. You've got the championships that are unified and undisputed when it comes to the tag titles and the Universal Championship. It does feel like the steps are being made, one, to bloat out the roster once again, to split them up, and a hard split as well. It also feels like, considering the rumblings that we've heard, specifically about championships, that particularly the undisputed Universal Championship is going to be split up very soon. There have been rumors about Karrion Kross possibly becoming the WWE champion and then being on Monday Night Raw. Of course, Theory still has the Money in the Bank briefcase. That could happen. The difficulty is how they navigate that without Roman Reigns being pinned. They might do a WrestleMania 2000 situation when they had that match between Jericho, Benoit, and Angle, where you have a triple threat match where both titles are on the line in separate falls. Therefore, you could have a Drew McIntyre pin a Karrion Kross and become the WWE champion, and Roman Reigns could lose a championship without actually being pinned and ultimately come out on top as he retains the Universal Championship. They could do something like that, or have Karrion Kross pin Drew McIntyre, although I don't think they do that at Clash at the Castle in the UK. You never know. That would be the Vince McMahon thing to do. But certainly it does feel like a draft's on the horizon, and my hope would be, now that a draft could be, and most likely is on the horizon under Triple H, we knew historically Vince McMahon could never commit to a draft. He never could. The best he ever did is the initial brand split, 2002. There was a bit of crossover for a time while they figured out the rosters that they wanted, and they had an undisputed champion that appeared on both shows and all that kind of stuff. But then they figured it out by the end of the year. They needed to have two separate rosters, two separate world champions, and largely they kept them separate for, gosh, I mean, what? But we're talking like 5 years? I mean, realistically, they were pretty separate, pretty hard and fast separate for a long period of time. And you could argue now Triple H hopefully would be willing to commit to that. And maybe we can get a hard and fast brand split and not a draft every year. Or, because that for ages, we didn't have a draft for a long period of time. It was just you had your rosters and that was it. And maybe they'll do that. And if they do go with that, I want the shows to look different. I want to have different Titantrons. I want to have different presentations. And maybe Triple H will go back to that. He's in control of it all now. So anything certainly is possible. But let me know your thoughts on a potential draft in the comment section below. Who would you like to see go where? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe to Wrestle News 365 in the bottom right hand corner. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.